This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I am your host, Noah Taluki, and on today's episode, well, Brad Holmes is hired as general manager of the Detroit Lions. We will get into that. And also, what does this mean for the future of the roster? We'll break down some divisional weekend things from the NFL, and also Dan Campbell from the Saints, a front runner for the head coaching job for the Lions. Looks like he will be getting the job, as some rumors have said. So we'll talk about him a little bit. Also, one coach that was hired in the past week, I want to know why the Lions didn't even interview him. We'll get more into that later. And also, our guest this week is Luther Bradley, former Detroit Lions cornerback for 4 seasons in the late 70s and early 80s. His nephew is Brad Holmes. So we're going to learn about Luther's career at Notre Dame and for the Lions, and also a lot of questions about Brad later on. So it should be a great interview. Really, really looking forward to it. Hopefully everybody had a great weekend. Definitely divisional weekend was awesome, I thought. Now, I didn't watch as many of the games as I did the wild card, but looking at the highlights, reading up on it, I mean, it's awesome. I mean, look at that big storyline, New Orleans versus Tampa Bay. I mean, the old guys, the History Channel guys, as that one graphic on social media was put out there. I mean, these guys were 40 plus and they were battling it out. And Tampa Bay going to the NFC Championship along with Green Bay. And then on the other side, Kansas City eking out a win without Patrick Mahomes in the second half. And also Buffalo beating Baltimore. I mean, what a year. I mean, we have Tampa Bay, as I should say, in the NFC Championship, who hasn't been since 2002, and then Buffalo hasn't been since 1995 or just before that. So, I mean, it's an interesting year in the NFL, and then on top of that, the Browns winning a playoff game. I mean, it's crazy for sure. But as I mentioned last week, my picks, I was almost perfect on my picks for the wild card weekend. The only game I did not get right in a pool with my friends was that Pittsburgh-Cleveland game. I thought Pittsburgh would at least win one playoff game, but the Browns just came in. They outsmarted them and played better. But I do have both NFC and AFC championship games picked correctly. I did pick correctly the Chiefs versus the Bills, and on the other side, I did correctly pick the Packers and the Bucks. And I need Kansas City, and I need Green Bay to win this one, and then I need Green Bay to win the Super Bowl and Aaron Rodgers to be my MVP, because in this pool, if you correctly predict the MVP, you get extra points, and that's kind of like a tiebreaker. So right now I'm actually tied for first with another guy, but he picked Josh Allen and the Bills to go to the Super Bowl and to win it. So if the Packers win, if the Bills lose, I pretty much have this wrapped up, hopefully, and I'm at least going to win money because the top 10% of points win money, and I think right now I'm in good shape. So hopefully it'll be good. It's always fun to do stuff like this, a little fantasy action as well. I like doing the NFL fantasy playoff. I just can't get enough of fantasy football, so I just do it for fun. I'm not in a league or anything during the playoffs, but I just submit it in the public bracket or the public league on NFL.com, and it's fun to see that because you get double points for if you have. So like what I did was a lot of my guys were Chiefs players or Packers players because I'm really betting on them to go to the Super Bowl. So what I did was I started a lot of them in the wild card round because you get extra points the next week when they actually play. So it pays off. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, I think he ended up getting me 42 points because they were double from the wild card. So he got 0 in the wild card, obviously, because he didn't play. But since it was double, in the second round, he got me more. So I actually got a lot of points last week, and only one guy I have to replace, and that was Alvin Kamara. For running back, and everybody else is still in. I mean, Bills are going to get me ×3. There's a couple other players that are going to get me ×3, so it'll be awesome to see how I do in there. But, of course, the big news for the Detroit Lions is Brad Holmes being hired as general manager for the Lions. A young guy in his early 40s. He was with the Rams organization for 18 years, started out as a PR intern and kind of worked his way up. He was a national scout, then he became, a regular scout, and then he's a college scout, the director of college scouting for the Rams, and he's found a lot of gems in the draft. And you got to think about this. The Rams have not really had a first-round pick in the last few drafts. And the fact that they're still putting together winning teams and all that, it's remarkable, especially without first-round picks. And a lot of that has to be credited to what Brad Holmes and company have done in the college scouting department. I'm very impressed, and I'm very excited for this hire because the number one thing that has plagued the Lions for a long time has been the evaluation of talent. I mean, you look at Bob Quinn. Were these guys really good evaluators of talent? No. What they did was, and this is my theory, Bob Quinn came in as the director of pro scouting. There's a difference between pro and college scouting. Pro scouting, you're looking more at the professionals in the NFL, scouting those guys out. Whereas college scouting, you're focused, obviously, more on the draft, more on guys that are coming up and guys that you want to, contribute to your football team. And that is Brad Holmes' specialty. His specialty is evaluating talent, and that is exactly what this football team needs. Now, were there other candidates out there that maybe, had a little bit more experience in working with a general manager? Of course there were. I mean, there were Ed Dodds. I mean, there was John Schneider who was out there for a while. I mean, there was Kevin Colbert, obviously, but that never really materialized. But, even though he doesn't have quote unquote, as much experience as some of these other guys in the general manager office. I mean, he's been living in Atlanta for a long time, working with different scouts and all that outside the building, not really inside. But I don't think that matters because I think this is a great hire because he knows how to evaluate talent and he's led scouts before. Now, is that different than leading guys, in a building every day? Of course. But I think he's going to transition nicely into this role, and it's going to be big for the Lions because this is a new turning point. This is a new chapter in the franchise's history. I mean, this is straight from the Rams media guide. I was looking at his profile on there just to see what he has done in the past. That was when I found out he was a PR intern and scouting assistant, area scout, national scout. 2013 is when he became the director of college scouting. Some of the duties that it said in here, he oversees the college scouting department, manages all scheduling and operations for area scouts, responsible for assigning cross-check coverage nationwide during the fall season and evaluates all NFL draft prospects nationwide. Works with personnel directors to improve technological tools and implement overall scouting procedures. I think that's an interesting point at the bottom that I just mentioned, is the fact that he's using new technology and analytics. And that's, I think, part of the reason why the Lions hired him is because, and we've seen this, a lot of it has been seen in baseball, but you're starting to see it more in other sports like basketball and football, is these use of analytics. You see those commercials out there for those advanced stats and through Amazon and through, all these other places. So I think part of it is kind of he embraces that future of the analytics and looking at players in a different way. And I think that's important, especially for the Lions, because, they need any help that they can get. So I think, like I said, I think this is going to be really big, a big hire for the Lions. I'm really excited about it. And I think it's interesting, too, because Brad was a PR intern for the Rams back in 2003, and his degree is actually in journalism and mass communications. So I think that's also important because, as we all know as Lions fans, the communication has not been there a lot with the general manager, with ownership. I mean, we have barely heard from them in the last few years. I mean, they came out to announce, that they were firing Matt Patricia, Bob Quinn. Okay. But we want to hear from them more. And I think this is important, especially Brad Holmes, because it seems like he has experience in communication with people, with communicating with others, getting the message across. And I think this is going to be big for the Lions because they need a guy like that. They need somebody who could step up and be that leader and communicate with others. And I really, really hope this works out. I really do. And with everything in his background, I think it's really, really going to help the Lions in the future. All right, so at the time of this recording, it looks like Dan Campbell will be named the head coach of the Lions. They were just waiting for the Saints to lose because, according to NFL rules, you can't hire a guy, technically when he's still in season. You have to wait till, the off season for that. And so as of now, it seems like they will hire him as the head coach. I mean, still rumors are rumors, but, a lot of credentialed people are reporting on that. So we just assume right now that he will be named the head coach, the assistant head coach for the Saints, and also the tight ends coach. Was the tight ends coach in Miami for about 5 years. Was also the interim head coach in 2015 when Joe Philbin was fired. And this is a guy that's really a player's coach. He was a player. He played in the NFL from 1999 to 2009. 3 seasons, 2006 to 2008, with the Lions as a tight end. Also won the Super Bowl with the Saints back in 2009 with Drew Brees, who, by the way, looks like he may retire. I mean, he was just really taking it in after the game on the field with his wife and his kids. And I don't know if that's just normal. I don't know if he does that after every game, playing with his kids on the field and all that. But I don't know, just the way he walked off the field and the way he took that peek back. I don't know. It just seems like it's maybe the end for Drew Brees, but at least it seemed like it from body language and all that. But I digress. Anyways, Dan Campbell, I think this is a guy that's really going to be a leader. He's going to be a guy that's going to be a player's coach, like Patricia was not. Patricia definitely was not a player's coach. There was a lot of complaints about that. There was a whole rift between the coaching staff and the players, which is chemistry for disaster in the NFL. But this is a guy that's really going to listen to input from players, and I'm excited for it. He's a leader. I don't know his X's and O's. I know that he talked about running the football and establishing the run. And, as much as people think, okay, this is a quarterback league, and it is. You have to have a good quarterback to win. But the thing is that you got to be able to run the football to win games as well. And I totally agree with this. And it's all about physicality and running the ball. And that's really, in the end, the team that does that the most will win the game. And you can have a great quarterback, but you got to be physical up front. You got to be able to at least run the football. Be consistent in that. And I know Matt Patricia preached all that, and it didn't work out, but I think this is a little bit more legit than Matt Patricia, because those were frauds right there. They didn't know how to run a football team and coach and all that. But I trust Dan Campbell, and as of now, if he gets hired, which it seems like it will be, he will be a good guy for the Lions. And one more thing before we get to our guest, Luther Bradley, in a few minutes. Just wanted to mention one coach that was hired this past weekend. I was shocked that the Lions did not interview him, and I've been saying this all along. I've been saying this since Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn got fired. Why did the Lions not interview, at least, Brandon Staley? I was telling all kinds of people. And I never really revealed it a lot on the air about who my favorites were, because I just didn't want to play that game until we kind of, knew who was out there and everybody's seasons was done. And, but my guy was always Brandon Staley. And no, it goes beyond the John Carroll connection. It goes beyond that. Just 5 years ago, he was coaching here at my alma mater, John Carroll University. Just another guy in the pipeline for the Blue Streaks. But he was hired by the Chargers on Saturday, the former Rams defensive coordinator for 2 seasons under Sean McVay. It goes all beyond that. This guy is going to be a great NFL head coach, a real leader, a real X's and O's guy on defense. And I don't know why the Lions didn't even interview. There were other teams that interviewed. I can't remember off the top of my head who interviewed for him. I think it was about 2 or 3 other teams. Why the Lions weren't in the mix, I have no idea. I don't know why they weren't in the mix for Brian Daboll. I don't know why they weren't in the mix for Joe Brady. At least interview these guys. Now, granted, I think the Lions did a good job with at least interviewing a lot of candidates, which was fine. I don't mind. I don't mind interviewing Marvin Lewis. I don't mind interviewing Thomas Dimitroff for GM. At least they had a pool of candidates. But there were just some that I had question marks, like, why aren't they at least interviewing them? And Brandon Staley was one of those guys, because he is one of the more up-and-coming head coaches in the NFL. And he's going to hire a great staff in L.A. He's got a great quarterback. He doesn't even have to move. He's going to be in L.A., just like he was with the Rams. Quarterback. He's got a decent defense with Bosa and some other guys, maybe a little fine-tuning here and there. But I think it'll all work out for him. I just don't know why he wasn't interviewed by the Lions. Just another questionable mistake, I think, by the Lions. I just don't understand. And at least give somebody, I know he's young, and, there were some people out there that thought maybe he was a year or 2 away from being a head coach, but, hey, he's got a great opportunity with the Chargers, and it'll be great to see what he does. Keep that name in mind, folks, whoever's listening to this podcast, Brandon Staley. I think he's going to be a great head coach, somebody I wanted the Lions to get, but unfortunately didn't even land an interview with him. And joining us here on the Open Mic Night podcast is a special guest, ex-Detroit Lion, Luther Bradley. Luther was a cornerback for the Lions from 1978 to 1981, also a first-round pick out of Notre Dame and a consensus All-American in 1977, also the nephew of Lions general manager, the new general manager, Brad Holmes. Luther, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to it all morning.
So as I mentioned, you did play at Notre Dame. You started on that 1973 team, and you won the national championship in 1977 and was a consensus All-American then. But also, you played with Rudy, and Rudy played with you.
There you go.
The legendary Rudy Ridiger from the movie in the 90s. That was the inspiration for the movie Rudy. So what was it like to have him as a teammate? And, is the movie an accurate description of what actually happened?
Yeah, I tell you what, it was a pretty interesting story. I remember one of my buddies calling me. I'm just talking about the production of the movie. And he called me and he's like, can you believe that Rudy's going to do a movie? I said, Rudy is going to do a movie? How can Rudy do a movie? And so anyway, he tells me this long story about Rudy asking everybody, and it seemed like in Los Angeles to do this movie. And finally they said, okay, we'll do the movie. But Rudy was a guy who really had perseverance, and he persevered no matter what. He wasn't an athletic guy. He wasn't a big guy, but he was just a tough guy that really wanted to be there. And so it was kind of nice to kind of have him around, although, he wasn't a player and he wasn't significant, but he make everybody work. And I think that's what we really appreciated about Rudy. So you asked another question. Mm-hmm. Was some of the stuff true? Well, the thing that wasn't true is that we didn't put him up on our shoulder and take him off the field. But there was one guy who gave up his jersey for Rudy. So that's how Rudy ended up being on the field and participating in that game.
Wow, what a story that was, to have a teammate, that all of a sudden you make a movie about. Now, did anybody play you in the movie?
Yes. Yeah, I was one of the captains in the movie. But his best friend there was like two captains, but his best friend was my best friend. And his name was Willie Fry, and Willie, he and Willie worked out quite a bit together. Because I talked to Rudy after the movie. I said, was that me? And he said, yeah, I was you. But he said they wouldn't let me use real numbers. So the number that they had was a little bit different than the one I had.
Wow. What a story there. So after your playing days at Notre Dame, you were drafted 11th overall by the Lions in the 1978 draft. What was your initial reaction to being drafted by Detroit, not too far from Notre Dame?
Yeah, I was excited about it, actually. I thought that, eventually we would, make the playoffs, but we didn't get a chance to do that. But, I played with some great guys. Al Bubba Baker was the second-round draft pick, and he and I both were starters. And I don't know if you remember or not, we were both on, they called the Silver Rush. And we were a great defensive team, and it was exciting. But you know what? But college is a little bit different than the professional ranks. The professional ranks is more like a job. The college ranks is that here all these buddies going to college with you, and you're having fun. So, the mentality changed once you get into professional ranks.
After your Lions career for 4 seasons, you actually ended up going to the USFL, the upstart USFL team, played for the Chicago Blitz, Arizona Wranglers, and the Houston Gamblers. So you were also the all-time leading interception leader in the USFL's history. So what was the reason for the jump from the NFL to the USFL? And just talk about, what an upstart league that was for a couple years in the 80s.
Yeah, well, you know what? I got released from the Houston, what was the Houston's team? I can't remember now.
Oilers?
Oilers, yeah, Oilers. I got released from the Oilers, and George Allen called. And he called me within, a couple of weeks and said, look, I know that you really can still play, and I'm going to have a team in Chicago Blitz. And he says, I want you to play free safety. And I think that you're going to be better at free safety than you were at cornerback and strong safety. They also played me at strong safety. And so I loved the idea. So I took it. It took the jump. And what I really appreciated about the USFL is everybody in USFL just wanted to be there. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about prestige. It's that they just wanted to continue their football careers. And so I was one of those guys who did. And luckily I played with another great defensive team. And George Allen let me kind of roam around and intercept passes. He would always tell me, he's like, don't worry about a thing. Don't worry about tackling. Just intercept balls. That's all we got you here to do. And so I had fun doing that. And so, yeah, I ended up leading the league, I think, in a couple of years in interceptions. And it was fun. It was a fun league, and I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Do you have like a really good memory, a fond memory of the USFL? Because, of course, it only lasted for a few seasons, but you were a big part of it. Yeah, it was 3 seasons. And then what happened is that they tried to compete with the NFL. And remember, they had this huge lawsuit, and we lost the lawsuit. They gave them $3 or something like that. But they did it the wrong way. They should have been patient and kind of hung around for another couple of years before they tried to compete. But, it happens. But you know what? It was fun. I had a great time, and I had no regrets. So, of course, after your playing days were over, your nephew, Brad Holmes, the current Lions general manager. What an exciting opportunity it is for you especially. But what kind of impact maybe did you have on his football life throughout his lifetime? Well, you know what? Not only was it me, but I don't know if you know, but his father was a Pittsburgh Steelers offensive lineman. My dad and his grandfather was a high school football coach. So it was in his blood, man, to be a football guy. And, of course, he played in college. He was kind of an undersized guy, but he loved sports and he loved football. And I think at one point he realized that he wasn't going to be a professional football player, and that was okay with him. All he wanted to do is to be a part of it. So it took him a long route to get where he is now. But I tell you the thing that really impressed me is that he is a great evaluator of talent. And I think that's what's going to really pay dividends for the Detroit Lions in the future. And they'll find out that when he researched a guy to draft him, he would have done everything possible to find out exactly how good he is, how he thinks, how he operates, and it's going to make a difference in terms of the quality of guys that they get. How long has Brad really wanted to be a GM in the NFL? Yeah, ever since he was out of college. And when he got out of college, I think he first worked with the Atlanta Hawks. It might have been, and I think it might have been a junior intern or something like that. But he just knew he just wanted to be on the management side ever since he got out of school, and he concentrated on it. It's like he took little jobs during the way, and he never got frustrated. Sometimes people get frustrated and want to get out of the career. He never did that. He always said, "This is my path. This is what I want to do. It might take me a while to get there, but I'm going to get there." And so to see him finally get there was a thrill. It's a thrill for our family. Our family is still really, really excited about all of this. I wonder something else too, because over the years, a lot of Lions fans complain about there's not a lot of communication between the management and the fans and all that. I just wonder, Brad was a PR intern with the Rams and kind of knows a little bit about that communication. So I wonder, anything from his previous background in PR, will that help with maybe him communicating better with fans and the media? Oh, absolutely. And when he was with the Rams as a national scout for college scouting, he said that the biggest thing that he got from the general manager from the Rams is that they communicated with the coaches, the organization every day. And he said everybody was on the same page. And he said that encompasses not only the recruiting of players from other teams, meaning trades, as well as drafting players. So he said, I understand that, and he understands how that works and how it's beneficial to his organization. So I think he's going to bring a lot of positive things, one of which is communication, as you mentioned. So scouting, of course, it's a lot of it's on the road, and he was the director of college scouting for the Rams for many years. And, so even though he wasn't technically really in the building all the time, and now he's going to be in the building as general manager for the Lions, just talk about, is that going to be a big transition for him? And is he going to be able to handle that especially with some really tough decisions to make as well?
Yeah, I think he's going to be able to handle it, no question about that. But he's been living in Atlanta for the last, 10 years or so. And that's been his hub, because his whole area of expertise is the Southeast Conference. And that's where he really spent a lot of his time. He says that's where the real football players are, a lot of them. And so he spent a lot of time going to Alabama, Georgia, and all those schools in the Southeast Conference. But now, but he still had to go to North Dakota or California. It didn't really matter where. As long as he could find the talent, he had to go there. I think that he has to make the adjustment of the weather, the first thing, because it's going to be colder up here. The other adjustment is that I think he's going to have a little bit more responsibility. So he's going to have to look over, make sure the scouting guys do what they're supposed to do, because he's probably going to change some of the culture to let them know what that he thinks that they need to do and how they need to operate. And then he also need to communicate that stuff with the new coach. The new coach is going to be instrumental. I mean, he's the X and O's guy. Brad is going to be, make sure he gets the players he needs, but there's going to be this coach out here who's got to also perform as well.
Is there any advice that you gave Brad, during the search process when he was being interviewed by other teams and right now when he was hired by the Lions?
Be himself. You got to be yourself in those interviews. You can't be somebody else. You just got to, make sure that you know what you're doing and what made you successful. And I think that when you bring that to the table, people respect it. And particularly if you're not coming in there phony and trying to make up stuff, and it doesn't work that way. You just got to be yourself and let the chips fall the way they're going to fall. I believe that the relationship that he's got with Rod and with the owner Sheila, that the relationship was good, and I think that it was a confidence thing where he felt like he could talk to them. They believed in him, and so it made the process easier. So when they offered him the job, he was ready to go for it. And because he also had an opportunity to interview with the Atlanta Hawks, Atlanta
Falcons.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, the Falcons. And so the Falcons, he said the Falcons were a lot more corporate, and versus the Lions. The Lions was a family-run organization, so he said there wasn't that many layers. There wasn't that that corporate environment. But so he said he kind of liked this. So I think there was going to be some good things on both sides that's going to make this really work.
So the previous general manager, Bob Quinn, he had come from New England, and he was the former director of pro personnel. But Brad comes in; he was the director of college scouting, or pro scouting versus college scouting. So how do you think this is going to be different for the Lions? Looking at more college guys rather than the pro guys like Bob Quinn was.
Yeah, I think that you really balance. I think there's a balancing act between pro guys and college guys, but your foundation of your organization has got to be from the draft. That's where you get your players. I mean, every once in a while, you're going to have to cherry pick a guy who's from another team and say, okay, if he's available and I need an offensive lineman or I need a wide receiver, you might be able to go get one. But the best way to doing that in the long term is through the draft, because you get them, you can groom them, you can tell them this is what you need, this is your expectation, and you know what you're going to get. Well, with pro guys, sometimes they get mad or sometimes then the money is not there. But I think the foundation of any organization is that you build from the draft, and then you cherry pick guys from the league.
So with Brad, even though he, quote, doesn't have any experience in terms of being a general manager, there are other, areas that he does have experience in. So how do you think that previous experience will help him in this new chapter, even though this new chapter he's never had, any experience in the general manager spot before?
Well, I think what they really want is that expertise he have with college drafting. I mean, that's where it's all at. And I think that they're going to surround him with other people who can do some of the other things, like maybe do the salary cap, or some guys who might take care of the business side of the traveling and plans, making flights and all that kind of stuff. I don't really think that he's going to have to be content with that as much. I just think that they want him to make sure that they get the talent that they need to make sure this organization is successful. So I think he's got the skills, and the stuff that he doesn't have, I think he'd be able to learn, because he's a quick learner. He's a smart kid that knows how to get some stuff done. And so I think he's going to be fine. He'll be fine.
Final question for you, Luther. Of course, a lot of news swirling around that Dan Campbell will be the next head coach for the Lions, the assistant head coach for the Saints previously. These days, a lot of general managers and coaches really work together. A lot of times it was more separate back in the day. But how well do you think Brad will work with Dan Campbell, assuming that he gets the Lions job?
Oh, I think he'll do well with them. And it's not going to be difficult to work with somebody who's really professional. If as long as they're on the same page and as long as they're talking to each other, I think they'll get along well. That whole concept that you mentioned earlier, the communication, I think that's key. And if they continue to mature in that way, where they talk to each other on a daily basis, they both know what they need and to be successful, they'll be fine. I'm not sure that he's going to be the guy yet, because nobody said,
right.
There's rumors, but whatever guy that they get, I think that he'll be able to work with them as long as he knows that they're both there to win. You got to be there to win and not just to have a job. And you got to be able to put in the work. And I think Brad is definitely there to put in the work. And I'm sure that the offensive coordinator comes in is going to want to do the same.
Luther Bradley, former Lions cornerback for the Lions and also a first-round pick out of Notre Dame, the uncle of new Lions general manager Brad Holmes. Luther, thank you again very much for joining us.
Not a problem. It's been my pleasure.
I want to thank Luther Bradley for coming on to the podcast again. What a great interview. It was fun to talk a little Notre Dame with him before and a little bit of Lions, and then Brad, his nephew Brad. It's going to be great. I think it's really going to work out, and I'm really excited for this new chapter of the Lions. It may take a while. It may take a couple years, just the roster is in shambles, but I trust him. I trust that he's going to make the right decisions, and he's been wanting to be a GM for a long, long time, ever since college. So I'm really happy for this new chapter in Lions history, and it's just great that his his uncle is a Lions alum. Makes it even sweeter. And then possibly Dan Campbell coming on, he's also an ex-Lion, so at least they kind of a little bit know, I guess, the culture of the Lions. So it'll be awesome, and I'm really looking forward to it. I can't criticize anything right now because these guys don't have enough experience with the Lions right now, and we haven't seen enough from them. Can't criticize. Got to be all positive here. I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of both of these hires, especially if Dan Campbell comes through, which obviously it should be right now, according to some of the experts out there. But it'll be awesome. It'll be awesome to see, and I'm not expecting things to happen right away. Right away. I mean, it'd be nice, but it may take a couple years or so. But it'll be interesting to see how that all blossoms out. Make sure to tune into some of the other episodes. We got the Fan Report, the Wrestling Podcast, Doc and Jock, Practice Squad among the Michigan podcast as well. Great listens. It's really informative, and Adam and John just do a great job among the other hosts on the podcast. So thanks again, folks, for tuning in. Hopefully next week we'll get some other interesting guests. Hopefully somebody that knew Dan Campbell. We're working on that right now. But thanks again, folks, for tuning in again to Open Mic Night.